following film podcast frequently contains adult content, including foul language and descriptions of adult situations. Spoilers for the films discussed occur often. Listener discretion is advised. Now take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
Welcome to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 167. I'm your host, Lee, making enough money to keep body and soul together, Russell, joined by my co-host, Daniel. I think you've pushed the erotic angle about as far as you can, Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and you can never push the erotic angle too far as I'm concerned.
Not even if you're, a guy who's dressed like a 1930s businessman for some reason in this 1980s movie.
Especially that, you know.
All right, and we're joined by our special guest who's been on here before, Greg. Block the exit and set fire to the whole damn place. Balowski, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'd certainly like to take the erotic angle and block the exit.
Yes, indeed.
There are lots of ways to take that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that in a consensual way. That's what I'm gonna do.
Oh yes, it's all consensual-ish.
Yeah, everybody take it.
That's right. I am doing well. I kind of wish I was a little more drunk, but I had to drive around this evening, so I'm having a nice Perrier. So maybe I'll be coherent today.
Well, we don't want that on this podcast. What the fuck are you doing?
Well, I got to professionalize it for your podcast, for your Patreons.
Yeah, for all the Patreon subscribers.
Yeah.
You're getting professional, Greg. Yeah. All right, so we're going to be looking at StageFright from 1987, but before we do that, we do have a couple comments to get here, too. So just 2 comments from the Facebook group this time. They Must Be Destroyed on Sight on Facebook. Join that group, and you can leave comments, and we'll read them. That's the way it works. Basically,
even if they suck, or especially if they suck. We'll totally read them.
Especially if they suck. If your comments suck, we'll single you out directly and make fun of you. But this time out, we have 2 movie suggestions, and one from Cameron Sullivan. He suggests Starship from 1984. He says, a crazy sci-fi adventure oddity by Roger Christensen, who was the award-winning set designer and art director on Star Wars and Alien, with music by one of the Genesis members. Okay. I've never heard of that film.
I can't say I have either. Yeah,
no, and I didn't have time to do research on it, but I am going to look into it. So thank you, Cameron.
Always down for some cheesy 80s sci-fi, though.
Yeah, and Jeff Williams comes in with his recommendation of the week, and this time out it's Dementia from 1955. He says, a proto-Lynchian, dialogue-free, black-and-white thriller about a psychologically unstable young woman's late-night sojourn through the bowels of an unnamed city. Dementia was initially denied release by the New York Censor Board 11 times due to mildly violent and suggestive content. Wow, okay. It was ultimately sold, recut, and distributed as Daughter of Horror with an audio voiceover track added by Ed McMahon that needlessly over-explain what was already obvious. Parts of the edited film were used in the iconic theater scene in the 1958 classic The Blob, where it played as a campy movie within the movie that teenage characters mocked and laughed at, ironically. However, the original silent cut of Dementia is actually quite unsettling, especially when paired up with an alternative modern music soundtrack. Awesome. That actually sounds pretty interesting.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. Yet again, thank you, Jeff Williams. So yeah, either of you guys have anything you've watched lately you want to talk about?
Well, I've got a few things, nothing too exciting. So, I've rewatched basically the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, mainly because my wife, I sort of showed her the important movies before we went to go see Endgame. She really liked it, so she wanted to fill in all the blanks. So we've basically caught up with all that. So now I've refamiliarized with myself with that, and I must say I've actually appreciate those movies. Most of them, not all of them have held up that well, but I do appreciate a lot of the movies a lot more than I did on their first viewing, especially when I'm like, oh yeah, this character was in this movie, I forgot. So definitely worth rewatching, but I won't talk more of that since there's a podcast for that apparently.
We don't know anything about those movies. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, then another Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oh, wait, it's not Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the Spider-Man movie, Into the Spider-Verse. I watched that. I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. I don't think I liked it as much as a lot of people did, but that could just be because everyone hyped it up for me by the time I saw it, and I expected basically the finger of God to come down and have spiderwebs on it. And the last movie I watched, which I actually really enjoyed, more so just for what it was the Deadwood movie. And for those of you who don't know, it's a cowboy series, came about 13 years ago. I think ended about 13 years ago. Quite an enjoyable series that I think has the world record for the amount of cocksuckers that were said throughout it. And I felt the show never ended in a very satisfying way. So this movie gives it a little bit better of a satisfying conclusion. It still feels like an episode. You kind of wish there was another one after it, but at least it does give you a satisfying conclusion. And you're like, all right, well, this was maybe not worth waiting 13 years for, but it's good. I recommend it if you watch the series. If you've never seen the series, no point in watching it.
Well, I should finally start watching the series, as Daniel keeps pressuring me to do, and then I can watch this. Now that it's concluded, now that there's a real conclusion to it, I should start watching it.
Yeah, I haven't seen the film yet. I have seen the series, but I'm not one of those that have like sat down and watched the whole thing 3 times or whatever. But I think the series is quite good. Although I wasn't really like yammering for an ending necessarily. I was kind of, the series is such just like an experience in and of itself. I am curious how they kind of finish it off, but it's also like it's been let sleeping dogs lie sort of thing, So
yeah.
We'll see.
Because I certainly never expected them to make a movie. I was the same way, but I was like, oh, a movie's coming out. I want to watch it. I'm like, okay, now I'm happy they made it.
And what you were telling me, Greg, is that off the air, that a lot of the actors now look a lot older, of course, because it's 13 years later, but it's only set like 5 years later. And we were just kind of saying like, well, that kind of makes sense because in the Old West, you kind of probably aged that way anyway. So,
yeah, I'm not sure the exact timeline, but yeah, I don't think it's supposed to be as long as it's been in real life. I think it's a lot more. A little bit of time has passed, but yeah, some of the actors, I didn't recognize them at first stage so much. I was like, whoa. Yeah.
The only thing I'll probably mention is I did watch Jessica Jones season 3. So that's the Marvel on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was better than the second season. The second season was distracting is probably the way I'd put it. I enjoyed it, but if some of the stuff on it felt a little forced to me. This sort of gets back to Jessica Jones detective. There's still personal issues and all that stuff. It's still got sort of a noirish bent to it, but it's much more about her being a detective and trying to prove herself. And, the villain is more interesting. He's not a super powered guy or anything like that. He's just a plain intelligent psychopath who's trying to play mind games with her and fuck with her. And I really enjoyed it. Like the villains feel more on her level again. It's like Kilgrave, where it's more of a mental chess game kind of thing. Right. Although Kilgrave actually had mental powers or whatever, but still. And I liked it. I like at the end, there's a quick turn where you think it's going one way. And then it turns around and it goes, fuck you, Jessica Jones ain't going nowhere. And that might be spoilers for some people, but I thought it was pretty good. Although I will poo-poo on the Luke Cage cameo, because it felt like the most shoehorned in, forced bullshit I've seen on a Marvel show, other than like Iron Fist. But there you go. But it's worth watching. It's again, it suffers from, you probably didn't need 13 episodes for this. Probably could have done it in 8, but I enjoyed it, so none of it really dragged for me or anything like that. So it's worth checking out.
Awesome.
So, did you have anything, Daniel?
No, I actually spent time outdoors this week, so I did not actually watch any movies. It was unfortunate. I know I bring a certain gravitas to this podcast by never leaving my house, and I know that's what people expect from me. But I did actually leave the house and do some traveling. And, I know I disappoint the audience with that, but, it's a thing.
Yeah, whatever. Rocky Mountain High. So we are going to take a quick break. We're going to play some podcast promos, some music from the film, and we're going to be back with Stage Fright. Hey, this is Tom Six, director of the Human Centipede movies. I wish I was as good as David Cronenberg, but I'm fucking garbage. But at least I can drown my sorrows away by listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was.
How
did
you watch this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
You come to the right place. My name is Gary and I'm your guide to Cinema Beef Podcast. Every episode we not only deliver film reviews, we also dismantle some of your favorite and most hated films. Sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet.
Alright, calm down. Every show I hope to have a new co-host, podcasters and listeners alike. That's right, I'm talking to you people. I take all comers.
You're sluts.
That's not very nice. The only rules, well, let's ask the best cooler in the business.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
So join the insanity and please vent your frustrations. I'm available on TalkShoe, iTunes, and Stitcher Smart Radio. And remember, here at the Cinema Beef Podcast, if you got beef, I've got the grinder.
Broadcasting from the cursed earth, the Psychosemanticast.
Let us face, without panic, the reality of our time. The fact that atom bombs may someday be dropped on our cities. And let us prepare for survival by understanding the weapon that threatens us.
To have an ignorant, thin-skinned megalomaniac who sends off Twitters at 3 a.m. if somebody angered him.
Neo-Nazis turning up in Washington, D.C. to have a rally saying Heil Trump.
We talk about politics.
I knew I couldn't trust you corporate greaseballs.
We talk about movies.
You can't come down here and arrest people just because of what they look like. Are you crazy? But that's police harassment.
We talk about political movies.
We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. They're all around us and we never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses.
The Psychosemanticast.
Here's what some people are saying about the Projection Booth podcast.
This podcast takes no shortcut in producing outstanding content. How they haven't become more widely recognized is beyond me.
I love this show. Smart commentary, in-depth interviews, and great production.
It's obvious how serious these guys take their podcast and bring that next level of professionalism that anyone would be hard-pressed to match.
The Projection Booth Podcast, with new episodes available every week at projectionboothpodcast.com.
All right, Stage Fright from 1987.
Maniac is hiding in here.
You've gone out of your mind. One, kill her! Kill her!
What are we going to do now?
You've got to find the key.
A.K.A. Deliria, a.k.a. Stage Fright Aquarius, or just Aquarius, and even known as Bloody Bird in some markets. Directed by Michele Soavi. I think I'm actually pronouncing that correctly. He's one of the most difficult names to pronounce in Italian cinema, apparently. Everybody pretty much gets them wrong, so even if I got them wrong, at least I tried. Written by...
Just call him Rico Suave, it's fine.
Rico Suave. Written by George Eastman, who is a well-regarded writer, actor, director of everything from the greatest stuff in the genre to schlock and shit. And Sheila Goldberg. It is starring Barbara Cupisti as Alicia, David Brandon as Peter, Mary Sellers as Laurel, Robert Giligorov as Danny, Joanne Smith as Sybil, Giovanni Lombardo as Giovanni Lombardo Radis as Brett, Martin Phillips as Mark, Perio Vida as Ferrari. I love that name, Ferrari. Like they think that's like an American, like I don't know. That's great because it's supposed to be set in America, and it's so stupid. Loredana Perella as Corrine, Okri Schweck as Betty, Mickey Knox as Old Cop, Michele Soavi himself as Young Cop, and Clayne Parker as Irvin Wallace. And we have a little synopsis here from Jean-Marc Rocher again from IMDb. A troupe of struggling stage actors is rehearsing for a small-town production of a play. Everything seems to be as it should until one of the cast members turns up dead. In a panic, the others try to get out, only to find that they are now locked in the theater with the killer. Which one of them committed the murder, and who will get out alive? Okay, that's not quite the case.
Yeah, there's no real mystery about who's killing people here.
The movie pretty much tells you right from the bat who the killer is. There's no whodunit, which, as we get into it, I will point out I think that's kind of a little bit of a failing of the film. But, Greg, when's the first time you watched this, and what are your sort of general thoughts on it?
I watched this movie, I'm going to say somewhere in the range of 4 or 5 years ago for the first time. It was one of those... hey, what 80s slasher movies have I not seen? So, of course, I hit the old Googles and looked for some list, and this, along with some other ones, was on there. So I decided to watch it, and I must say I was very pleasantly surprised by it. I'm like, this is I kind of expect a lot of these movies I've missed. I watched them like, yeah, there's a reason why I missed them, but this was a very pleasant surprise. I thought it was a well done movie. It was I was surprised by the gore. I don't know why, but I kind of thought it was surprisingly gory. Like I guess even compared to Friday the 13th movies, they often kind of cut away when they're going to kill him, and this one they seemed to show it a little bit more, and it was quite brutal too. It almost had that, you know how whenever they have to remake a movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween, they have to make the killer more brutal. Pardon the motorcycle. They have to make the killer more brutal, and they have to make him bigger and tougher and just rip everyone apart. I almost felt like I got that vibe, not to that extent. I got that vibe from this killer, and I'm just like, this almost was like it was like ahead of its time in its brutality. That was just my initial impression. But and yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought the concept was very unique, actually.
Right on. Daniel, I assume this is first time watch for you.
First time watch. I watched it this evening. I enjoyed the film. Don't know that I'm going to revisit it anytime soon. I like the premise. I think it really doesn't, like, once it gets past the basic idea, it doesn't really do a whole lot with it. I do like the setting. I do like the idea of, like, kind of the first third of the film is kind of like, we get to see behind the scenes of a theater troupe and that sort of thing. And that's just always fun stuff. And some of the, like, you get to see people in weird costumes and, just behind the scenes stuff. It's always nice to kind of just see that world. Unfortunately, our characters are not very well defined, except for our asshole theater director guy, who really should be in the film more. Once he dies, I think there's a lot. There's a lot of air that kind of lets out of this film. I was surprised he didn't last a little bit longer. Then you get kind of a middle section, which is kind of people being chased by the killer, and kind of various deaths. About 4 people die in about a 7-minute period there, right around the hour mark. And then you get a final third, which is kind of like the last, basically the last girl being hunted down by the killer, and kind of more straightforward thriller stuff. All 3 sections kind of work on their own. They kind of creak together a little bit. I think Greg is right. I think there are some really impressive gore effects here. Some of it does seem like way over the top in terms of what you can expect a realistic human being to be able to do, but that's kind of the genre. I think my favorite kill is actually the drill bit through the door, through the gut.
Oh, yeah.
Was probably the one that really surprised me the most, and just kind of, that's pretty impressive, actually. No, that's I buy that. But other than that, it worked for me. It kind of did the job it was supposed to do. It's only 90 minutes long. Yeah, that's the film.
I've seen this years ago, but it was, it's one of those things where it's much like Greg. I was, playing catch up and sort of ticking off a list of what slashers haven't I seen yet and stuff like that. So I sort of breezed through it. I liked it. Didn't think too much about it. Rewatching it, I like it a lot more. Looking at it in a context of where it is in the genre and what year it was made, like 1987. This is both a mix of sort of Italian giallo and a straight-up slasher film. Greg's right. It has much more brutality than, say, like a Friday the 13th film, which at this point they were just being chopped to hell. Their gore was just getting slashed because it was bigger studios behind that stuff, and they were trying to release it to a larger audience, whereas this is a very small budget production. I think the budget for it was about $1 million US estimated. So
I mean, this is late for a traditional slasher, right? Normally those are kind of more early 80s. So this is pretty late in the game.
Yeah, this is both late for giallo and late for just the slasher boom from North America. So when you make a movie of this quality, especially the fact that Soavi, this is his first feature-length directorial film.
Mm-hmm.
He's putting this all together, and it comes off as well as it does. I think it's quite the accomplishment, actually. It's, I think, remarkably original, at least in the setup and some of the visuals for what it is for the genre.
Oh, parts of this film are gorgeous. I mean, for any film of any kind. I mean, some of the shots in this are actually really, really effectively done.
Yeah, at this point, Soavi was, before this, he was doing some, assistant directing on Dario Argento, Lamberto Bava things. At this point, this was producer Joe D'Amato was like, we're going to give you a film, kind of based on the fact that Soavi did music videos for a couple movies previous. He and you can kind of see the flair for the music video in this. Very very much 80s music video in a lot of places in this, especially with the music and everything combined with the visuals. And I like it a lot just for that, like the striking visuals. The killer is one of the more unique looking ones. He's not unique as a killer himself because he's intentionally made as a cipher, like a Michael Myers or something like that, where there's the backstory that, oh, he killed a bunch of people, but there's like no real motivation or anything like that. There's no deep dive into his background or anything like that. He's just a killer, and he's got this big fucking owl head on, and he's going around killing everybody. And I think one of the shortcomings of the film is that they don't use that sort of 10 Little Indians whodunit kind of thing. They could have done that. Like they could have did a bit more of a murder mystery kind of thing in this, even made it more of a giallo, but they went more for the just well-oiled slasher machine kind of thing product. You know, like they were much more interested in just setting up a bunch of really interesting kills, and for that, it works really well. I was really impressed with the setups for the kills.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's clear that a bunch of the budget went into the prosthetic effects, into the kill effects.
I mean, they're
like a girl gets like ripped in half at a certain point, and you know it's an effective shot. You know, I mean there's a lot of really effective stuff going on in terms of the gore effects and that sort of thing. Like that stuff works completely.
I mean,
no disagreements there.
This is a point where most Italian films looked really cheap, shitty, and I mean this was a cheap Italian film. But nothing on this looks shitty. Like, everything on this looks good. The gore effects are top-notch. The theater director or whatever gets his arm chopped off, and that looks fucking great. Like, it just... You can't see the fucking seams or whatever, right, in it. And like you're saying, the girl gets ripped in half.
There's another girl who gets, like, chainsawed and, you know, in a kind of interesting way, and then... You know, there's one girl who gets injured, and then later on you see, like, almost like a gangrenous, like, stuff on our shoulder, and you know that. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's some. It's pretty effective in the way that it sells a certain reality. I mean, it's this over the top reality, but there is a verisimilitude to the kills, to the way that the violence is used here.
And I think this one uses suspense pretty well too. Like basically in the stalking scenes and stuff like that, where you were mentioning the girl who gets chainsawed in the shoulder, and then that leads to a scene where she flees to the washrooms and the showers. And then our final girl also flees there, and she's in the shower right next to her when the killer comes in and finishes that girl off. And the suspense in that is pretty damn good, I'd say.
Oh yeah, no, it. I mean, you know, it's almost impossible to do a shower scene and not make me think of Psycho, but it did kind of favorably compare in a lot of ways to Psycho in terms of, you know, using the relative isolation, but you're both exposed and isolated within that shower curtain, where, you know, maybe I can be seen, maybe I can't. I can't be seen, but I'm also only a thin piece of fabric away from this guy who will murder me, you know, quickly. And so there is a vulnerability there. I really liked that sequence. I mean, that stuff really like worked 100% again.
Yeah, I also really like the part where she's looking at, and I don't remember the names, but she's looking at the chick who's dying. And she's in the shower, and she's kind of looking at her, and the girl who's about to die is looking at her, and the one girl's just like, "Come on, just take this for the team. Don't tell them I'm there. Just take your stabbing, but just don't give away my position, please, please, be here." And she was a good friend.
Well, no, she wasn't a good friend. She was a piece of shit, but she was too weak to like properly call out help to her and alert the killer. That was the thing. Because the characters are not super well drawn. Like they're just basically, oh, here's the catty bitchy actress, here's the flamboyantly gay actor, you know, that kind of thing. So like there's the little interpersonal rivalries or whatever between the actresses and stuff like that, and that's, you know, typical kind of thing. And I think Soavi knew what he was doing here, though. Like it's not super important to like make this deep or anything like that. Like he's trying to make a streamlined slasher film, and he's putting his visual flair into it or whatever. But he's making sly nods too. Like he does make sly nods to the people who got him where he is and the stuff he likes. A lot of this stuff looks a lot like Tenebrae from Dario Argento as far as like some of the kills go. But then there's like nods to John Carpenter with Halloween, where you have a psychopath escaping from an asylum in his basically his scrubs or whatever, or not scrubs, but what you wear when you're a patient in the
uniform.
The white whatever you wear in a mental hospital in the rain, pouring rain, just like in Halloween at night there, where Michael Myers escapes. Kind of the same idea there. And you have the bumbling cops trope, where, and this is something that's been used well and used very poorly a lot too. Like it's used very poorly in something like Last House on the Left, where it's just like a really grating tonal shift to everything else in the film. But I like it. Like, all the nods are very sly. They're not like on the nose. It's not like a movie made today where, you wear your influences on your sleeve and you go like, look how cute I am because I references Halloween in this scene or whatever, you know.
Right.
I was actually kind of surprised they had the bumbling cop scene. And again, maybe it's more common just in movies I'm not aware of. But from what I understand with Last House on the Left, it was done because that movie was created at a point in time when they sort of had to have some sort of comic relief just to give audiences a break from the intensity. But by 1987, audiences were kind of pretty used to this kind of movie, so I don't think it would have been necessary. So I almost think they could have just cut that part out, but I don't know, maybe it's more of an Italian trope or something.
Well, they could have cut it, but I think what it was Soavi was just sort of paying homage to that, because that was like the films he was watching, right? But you're right. Like, that was kind of used back in the day in the drive-in circuit to like calm the audience down a little bit. Like it was used in The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Actually, in The Town That Dreaded Sundown, that's half the film is the bumbling cops, which is really a tonal shift. But I
didn't mind the tonal shift of it. It was more just in this film. It was just more like it doesn't really go anywhere. It just they kind of come in at the end, but it's a. Made me think of like a Argyle and Die Hard. It's just like.
Well, it's like I kept expecting them to get killed at some point. Like the killer would like take a smoke break outside or something, and here's the cops. I'll kill them too.
Well, because... like at the hour mark, when half the cast dies in a few minutes,
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot that there was still one girl who hadn't been killed. And I thought, like, now the killer's going to get out and go, like, kill the cops and steal the cop car, and we're going to get. I thought we were going in a totally different direction with this movie, And then, like, oh no, there's one girl left alive, so we're now going to spend 30 minutes and kind of dealing with that. I mean, the bit where they do kill like everybody at once was kind of like it's effective in the sense of it's kind of shocking because I was expecting it to draw it out a lot more, but it is also like it's very clear. No, we don't care about these characters; they're dead. They're all dead. Let's just kill them all. That's fine.
No, it's all just. It's very much it's all set up for interesting kills, and that's kind of what it is, right?
And it's kind of a marker that the film is just kind of over peopled slightly, And I think that's kind of one of the, again, kind of like I understand like they had, we've got 6 ideas for kills, so we need 6 characters so that we can kill 6 people with it, like that's kind of the way it works, and it's fine for that. But it is also just this kind of level of really this would work better instead of having like 6 main cast members. If it had 4, I feel like we would spend more time with them and they could be a little bit more differentiated, and you could just have a little bit more of a personality there, and you wouldn't have to. It would let the thing breathe a little bit more. There is some kind of pacing stuff kind of going on where it kind of has a slow mode and then like a super fast mode, and that's kind of the only thing it knows how to do. I do think the last 30 minutes is probably the best stuff in the film, in the sense of like, once you get down to like the final girl, and then it becomes a little bit more of a kind of straightforward cat and mouse thriller. And I don't say that insultingly,
No,
Sorry.
Although I got to ask both of you, do either of you guys have any like knowledge of axe mechanics at all? Because sure, the killer uses the axe to chop off a guy's arm and then chop off his head. He uses it to chop off his head, but I don't think that's going to dull the blade of an axe that much where the final girl has to chop that rope for like 15 minutes straight.
Yeah, I did. Cutting through the spinal column and cutting through a rope should not be, the spinal column is much, much more difficult to cut through than a rope.
I just thought that was poorly planned on her part. Like, if it was me, okay, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a really strong wire or something, in which case it probably wouldn't have cut it all. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt.
Maybe it's like a steel cable or something.
I would have just let him climb all the way to the top. Oh, hey,
chopped him in the head, right?
Boom, yeah, hit him in the head right when he comes up. Like, why even bother cutting the cable?
Yeah, but
well, I mean, there is also the thing of like this is this guy literally ripped a woman up in half. Like. You don't want him to get close to you. This is not, this is not like this is the kind of superhuman strength killer kind of guy.
Yeah, he's full on like Michael Myers by like part 4 of Halloween kind of thing. Like he's a supernatural killer almost at this point kind of thing, right?
Well, I mean, spoilers, he takes a bullet to the head.
Yeah, but he gets up from it though.
Yep.
I think also like a little bit of a failing of this is like they overthink getting the killer to the location. I think the idea of the girls going out to, we got to get her to a hospital to have her ankle looked at, and they go to a mental hospital, and that's how the killer gets in their station wagon, and they go back and he shows up there. They could have went for the traditional. The killer just escapes from the mental hospital, and because the killer is a deranged actor, of course the first place he's going to go to is a theater. And the theater troupe just happens to be there, and he's going to start killing those people. You don't have to overthink that setup. Like, it's a very classic setup. And so it feels a little convoluted to me. But at the same time, you do get a really cool kill where the girl goes back to the car to... I can't remember what she's looking for, but she goes back into like that kind of pouring rain where it like physically hurts you when it hits you, when it hits your skin. She goes back to look for something, and the killer shows up and puts a pickaxe right through her mouth. Like that's fucking good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's definitely just the setup for the kill, and I agree it's a little bit over plotted. I don't know. I feel like there is a sort of another version of this movie that really kind of again focuses a little bit more on the theater troupe and sort of the realities of kind of life in this world. I mean, just because there is a sort of focus on like you have to stay here because like ultimately what are you going to do? Go back to your shitty old jobs, and so the sort of like the desire to make art, but also the desire for kind of economic independence and that sort of thing, sort of forces them into this situation. And I feel like there's another version in which sort of the madness of the theater director, as like the kill count starts up, and he's like, no, we must continue to rehearse, and I kind of expected to go in that direction, and it really just drops that completely after the first like 30 minutes or so. And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just kind of like, I mean, again, it's got a lot of different moving parts that kind of creak together. Again, the film overall works, but it does kind of like, I wish it was just a little bit more, coherent. I wish it was just a little bit more kind of thought through if it's going to be this, if it's going to have highs as high as it does, I want it to be like the script wise, I want it to be thought together a little bit better, so.
Yeah. But what do you guys think of like the Deus Ex Machina of it, where the black maintenance man comes back in the morning and shoots him, and then he repeats the lines like several times, like I shot him, or like whatever the fuck he says, like he says it over and over again. Like it gets into Italians don't know how to translate American dialogue properly, like. Kind of thing where it gets a little awkward.
It was also like that. Well, that whole ending scene is kind of, I guess, piggybacking off Daniel a bit. Is that it really kind of shows how the movie probably wasn't very well plotted, and they didn't really know what to do at the end. It's like, okay, well, the cops didn't count the amount of dead bodies. They didn't look for the killer. They didn't quarantine or whatever the crime scene. I guess the black janitor was just coming back to work like nothing had happened. I guess he's gonna like mop up the blood or something, and she just leaves the hospital. Oh, my watch is there. Okay, I'll just go back to this place.
That's a really expensive watch.
Myself.
Yeah,
this watch is really expensive. I can't. I must have this watch.
She is a starving actress. Like she has to pawn that off today. Like.
I guess that's the thing.
Can you send a cop there to get it for me? Like I probably it would be traumatic to go back. Like get a couple cops to go look for it.
I mean, you get the feeling this is like 3 hours later or something. Like, oh, my watch.
Yeah, and it's a crime scene with multiple bodies, and all of a sudden there's just no cops there. Like,
no, it was definitely maybe this is a searing indictment of the Italian, police force.
But it's supposed to be set in America, so it's
maybe it's a searing indictment of the American police force. Although
I guess
the opposite way. The cops
maybe
in
they
the
were
80s, they were all beating up black people for.
That's what I was about to say. How sad is it that we're both thinking the same thing on that?
They all the cops were really going after the building guy, the guy with the key. Because no, we got to see what were you up to the whole time, ignoring the complete serial killer.
And you know what? That's an alternate ending I could see of this, where the killer escapes and they lock up the black janitor who comes back in the morning. Yeah, I can see that happening. That would be the remake. That's actually probably what I'd do in the remake.
That's what Jordan Peele would do with this film.
But yeah, I like it a lot. I think it is even though it's just better than sort of the standard stuff going on. I think it's again, considering the two genres it's kind of putting together here and how late in the game it's doing it. I think it is kind of a major accomplishment considering it's like a first time effort from Soavi and everything like that. Yeah. So I think it's well worth checking out. And what are your guys' sort of final thoughts?
I really like just one more thing. I really like the sequence where the killer is like putting the bodies on stage and like decorating them with feathers. Yeah. And then for some reason the key is just stuck in the wood of the stage. And so the final girl, Alicia, she has to like kind of go underneath the stage. And there's both tension there, but there's also like when we say the film is gorgeous, like this is pretty gorgeously shot and also like much more sort of it's artistic without having its head up its ass sort of thing. Like it does kind of give you that sense of, that there's a real like kind of auteur, there's real cinema kind of being made here, but it doesn't rub your nose in it at the same time. And the film does have several sequences that kind of have that same general quality, but that one definitely kind of struck me as like, oh, this is deliberately, this is a director at work, like doing something interesting.
This is the guy who'd make Cemetery Man,
right.
A few years later. So, I mean, but yeah, no, that scene's great too. It's like, it's just, the killer, he murders all these people within like 20 minutes or something like that. And then he's just like, yeah, put all their bodies on the stage. And now I'm just going to sit here and like chill out, like relax a little bit, pet this kitty cat that's wandering around.
Well, you know what? It's one of those rare times you get to see, because in every single slasher movie, there's a last girl, and almost always they defeat Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, whoever happens to be. This guy thought he had killed everyone, and now you know what would happen. If Jason Voorhees just killed every kid in the camp, he'd just maybe build a campfire, sit down, maybe pet a raccoon or something.
Yeah, he just put them around a campfire, and he'd like make s'mores, and he'd like give them little sticks, and they'd all have little s'mores like melting. And that's what would happen. Totally.
Yeah, no, it is good stuff though, and like the killer's just sitting there, he's petting the kitty cat, and then he hears a noise, and you get a close up of the mask, and you see his eyes go down, and it's just another great suspense shot. Like it's another one of the great little suspense sequences in this, which is very well done stuff.
He doesn't even take off the mask to move the bodies around and stuff, and you think like that thing's probably heavy. You got to take that thing off.
Well, I mean that's kind of one of the only character details of this killer, where they make a mention that he is a deranged actor who killed a bunch of people. So there is a bit of a theatrical quality to all the murders he does and stuff. Like he decidedly goes over the top with his kills, and that just goes back to what Greg was saying, where like in a lot of horror remakes you see these days, they try to up what the original movies did. And then this movie feels like that in a certain way, because this movie is really brutal. Like it's hinted that the girlfriend with the short blonde hair, she's pregnant. She's got morning sickness and stuff, right? And she gets ripped in half, and then like that's nasty shit. And then the guy who originally wears the owl mask, the actor, the gay actor there, he doesn't get killed initially. He gets beaten up, tied up, and has one of the owl masks put on, and gets killed by his friends because they think he's the killer. Like, and he might, like, that guy must have been sitting there tied up knowing that that's the intention of the killer, and he knows it's coming. Like, that's kind of brutal shit. Like,
yeah, unfortunately it doesn't quite play on screen. I mean, it is kind of, as good as the film is, it does strike me that again, a modern remake would make a little bit more hay. It would just kind of execute some of these ideas a little bit more effectively. Because that's obviously what's happening, but it doesn't. We really don't get that sense of dread or that sense of suspense that we kind of come from that sort of mistaken identity. And it also just kind of plays in the idea that like a sort of a rewrite of this would probably give us a little bit more of a sense of one of us has got to be the killer kind of thing, which that's something that's easily overdone, and I'm not necessarily saying that would make a better film, but it would make a different film, and it would give us a sense of sort of the internal dynamics kind of playing differently. I don't know, it's just sort of one of those, it's a decision the film makes to just kind of not do that, and I kind of respect it for not giving us that version, because I think that could also be just kind of easily cliched. I think there's an interesting rewrite where you do something more like that.
Yeah, this movie is not concerned with complications. That's the thing. Like it doesn't want to get that complicated. It wants to get these characters in an enclosed space and kill them all. That's what it wants to do. So,
and it does that very well.
Yeah.
I sort of have the feeling that like if they remade this movie, they'd spend the first half hour digging into his childhood where his white trash family messed him up, and then the middle part would be him killing, and then the ending would be, oh, it turns out there's two killers. Secretly, one of the people is his long lost brother who visited him once in a mental hospital, and they have a mental link, or it would be something stupid like that. I think the simplicity of this movie. I mean. Yeah, okay, it's not going to win any awards or anything, but I think the simplicity of this movie kind of just works, like at least within the genre. Like I think they explain enough just to have the plot going, and I almost think if they explained less, if they cut out the whole hospital scene at the beginning, I almost think you could just make this. It almost would be a giallo. I mean, I don't know the giallo rules as well as you do, but I know the big thing is you want the killer to be unknown, and if they kind of got rid of that, you'd be a lot closer to it.
No, actually, you're right. If you didn't explain this guy's background at all, and like it just came at the end where it kind of makes no sense, because that's pretty much like 90% of giallo films, where the killer at the end, it just kind of doesn't make sense, but the film's so goddamn good that you don't give a shit. They could have got away with that in this film, I think. But yeah, we've got nothing else. So like I said, budget was about $1 million estimated. I have no box office for this.
It made 4 trillion Italian lira.
Maybe it did, yeah.
The same as like $300.
Yeah. For DVD options, Blue Underground released a 2007 DVD and a 2014 Blu-ray. And then there's also like the original Anchor Bay DVD that Blue Underground sort of ported and added extras to. You don't want the Anchor Bay one because it has no extras at all. So that's about it. Don't know what we're doing next week. I was actually thinking, Daniel, your lovely wife Shayna wanted us to do Baba Yaga at some point. I'm kind of thinking maybe that may be something we should jump into. Some more like Euro sexy horror stuff. We haven't done that in a while, so that might be yeah. But yeah, Gregory, you actually do stuff now. So tell people what you do.
I don't really do anything per se. I do have a channel called The Beer Burglar. I very occasionally put some videos on it. Actually, my favorite video I made is actually on the Well and Piss Up channel. I'm going to have to port that over so I can take credit for it. Actually, my wife can take credit because she edited it. It's quite good. But I don't really post a whole lot. But if you want to subscribe to my channel, it doesn't cost you anything. So maybe occasionally I'll put something up there that might be entertaining.
Right on. We'll link it in the show notes. Daniel, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Daniel E. Harper. I have a podcast called I Don't Speak German, where I talk about really terrible people who mostly want to genocide many, many other people. Every one of them is worse than the worst person in this film. So those are the people that I spend my time thinking and talking about. So yeah, go check that out if you're so inclined, and follow me on Twitter. That's it.
And you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Facebook links. Join the Facebook group. That way you can find out what's coming up next time and all the details. And you can leave comments, suggestions for movies, all that good stuff. And we reply quite a bit. We love the feedback, so send the feedback.
Yeah. Go find our reviews on YouTube and leave comments below them.
Yeah,
whether they are relevant or not, just leave comments there. That's when we see them, we will read them. And
if you go on YouTube to leave the comments, make sure they're really stupid.
Yeah.
That's I mean, you have to do that on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
within their like contractual.
Yeah, it's in the terms
guidelines.
of service. If you leave a YouTube comment, you have to be completely asinine. Use the word hollow hoax or both. That's the way it works.
Yeah. Accuse us of being clickbait.
And complain that we're not actually showing you the movie, but just two nerdy guys talking about the movie.
Complain that we're talking about a movie with tits in it and we don't show you the actual movie with tits in it because you're too lazy to do it yourself. There's
no other way to find tits.
But there are mild tits in this movie, so there's your nudity report. And if you're like Paul, there's bloody tits, so you can enjoy that.
Yeah, there's definitely dead people that are naked that Paul would be interested in, and there's naked people that are not quite dead at that time that everyone else would probably be interested in. Yeah.
But hey, a nipple's a nipple.
Depends. I think it depends. There's probably some nipples I wouldn't be interested in. Let's just put it that way. But enough nipple talk. We're done. We're not sure quite what we're doing next week, but I'm kind of thinking
we'll do
Baba
something
Yaga.
fun. It'll be good.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Daniel. And we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
You have been listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For other episodes, our links to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as links to podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.